Jay Bir back in here, Wolves Den coming at you here. Woo, son. Let me tell you, we said last week that this Troy game was going to be a barn burner. It did not disappoint. In fact, I think I even have it on record that this was going to be a bit of a tennis match. Yeah, it was. Let's get right into things here. Arkansas State on the road at Troy. They were actually touchdown dogs in this one. So this is a huge game. First one here. How about right out the gate, though? Lane Hatcher lofting one up to the homie Omar Bayless, 92 yards. That was their first offensive play of the game. Not a bad start there. Next drive here for Troy. Caleb Barker just flat loses the ball. Logan Westcott, scoop and score. This is best case scenario right here. 14-0, early. Don't let that fool you, though, here, because Troy, these guys are dangerous. They can do work. That is part of it right there. That is a nasty offense. Arkansas State, though, really doing what they do. In between the 20s, you see them holding there to a field goal. That would actually end up being huge later in this one. Unfortunately, though, turnover bug kind of got the Red Wolves in this one a little bit. We'll talk about that a little later on here. But you see it right there. Sets up Troy, perfect field position. And then Caleb Barker doing what Caleb Barker does. Boom, touchdown there. They're right back in this thing. That was Trey effort there. Lane Hatcher, though, had him a game. Finds Kirk Merritt there. Really got the triumvirate of receivers going in this one. We'll kind of go over the stats here shortly. But again, Forrest Merrill there doing some work there. The defensive line showed up when they had to. Unfortunately for the Red Wolves, running game, you see there, couldn't really get going. And unfortunately there, another turnover for the Red Wolves. And this game could have been out of hand a lot earlier on if it really weren't for those turnovers. Caleb Barker, rearing back, Brett Clark, catching the ball. I mean, they're right back into this thing here. But Arkansas State, that offense, then they put it on Lane Hatcher's shoulders. And the guy showed up. Kirk Merritt there with his second touchdown. It's 28-17 at that point. And you really have to be impressed with what Lane Hatcher did to be in his first collegiate start under the circumstances. Kind of, I would imagine, a little bit of a short week for him, considering the injury news came down for Logan Bonner a little later in the week. But there you see, 31-24. Troy would actually tie things up. I mean, beautiful throw there by Caleb Barker. Yeah, you can't even hate the guy. But again, like I said, Troy has got a pretty nasty offense. Troy actually takes the lead here. Only rushing touchdown for the Red Wolves right here. So let's go here. Jamal Jones with that one. And this one got really dramatic later on. You see the score there. You got the punt block there. That's kind of like a turnover. And that would be key right here. Setting it up. Lane Hatcher leaning back, letting it fly. Jonathan Adams Jr. going up and get it. Over two guys. You saw a couple of that from this last game here. A couple of guys going up and just going and out jumping. In fact, the commentators really said that's what you do with these guys. You let them just throw it up, out jump them. Troy scores again, though, and we've got a little bit of a nail biter here. But the Red Wolves would definitely, the defense showed up when they had to. You get the turnover there, and then this is one of the other ones I'm talking about right there. Didn't quite out jump them there. Got the INT there, but Tajay Chambers, that's probably play of the game right there, considering the time left, the circumstances right there, the way that both these teams were going back and forth. Arkansas State would add on a field goal to this one. And then another big-time play by the defense. Both these defenses really settled in there in the fourth quarter. Only 11 points scored between the two teams. Now, here you go. Here's sort of the odd ending to this one here. Troy's driving. They've got a little time left on the clock. It shows they have a timeout in the graphic there, but they actually didn't. Now, you see the clock there, 9 seconds. We have an injury now to a Troy offensive lineman. Now, the rules say under a minute left in the game and you don't have a timeout, then it's a 10-second runoff. Now, actually, when I was watching this one, I was a little confused because, again, you see Troy has a timeout there in the graphic, but apparently they did not. Boom, game is over with the 10-second runoff. As you see there, 9 seconds left. Game over. Red Wolves breathe a sigh of relief. Kind of an odd ending, a little anticlimactic, if you will, but hey, that's what's up here. All right, let's take a look at the numbers here. You see Lane Hatcher balled right all the way out, 25-35, 440 yards, 2 picks though, but hey, he had 4 touchdowns to go along with it. And here's the triumvirate of receivers. These guys went crazy. Omar Bayless, 10 catches, 213 yards, had that one TD. Jonathan Evans Jr., 7 catches, 105. Kirk Merritt, 6 for 104, a couple touchdowns there. Collectively, the rushing unit had over 100 yards. So, not the worst, but you would like to see that pick up a little bit. You saw Julio Jones there with the rushing touchdown as well. Also, third downs were, again, the Achilles heel a little bit for the Red Wolves, going 4 for 14. Troy going 8 of 19. Penalties, we talked about that last week. Huge, huge, huge there. Big number there. You don't like to see that. Troy, kind of an average day there in the penalty department. Total yards, lots of them. And then the defense, again, showed out when they needed to. A couple turnovers to go with 2 sacks, 7 tackles for a loss. And then there you see the turnovers, which almost bit the Red Wolves in the rear. All right. Whew. Take a deep breath here, guys. All right, roll with me. Bring in our good friend here of the show, Chase Gage. You can follow him at Chase Gage1 there on the Twitter machine, all that good stuff here. My man, what do we make of that one? Because it feels like this was a pretty typical Arkansas State v. Troy type of game. It always comes down to the wire with these two in recent games. Man, help me digest what that was.
Man, I'm still trying to figure out what happened. It was one of the craziest games that I think I've ever seen in my life. I mean, I was trying to, during the game, keep up with all the craziness that happened. There were 3 one-play touchdown drives, a defensive touchdown, a 92-yard touchdown, a blocked punt, a fake punt, a 58-yard punt, muffed kickoff, fifth-string running back scores a touchdown, receiver has 200-plus yards. There was a safety, a few interceptions, and then a 10-second runoff. I mean, I couldn't think of a more fitting ending to the craziness than the 10-second runoff rule there. I don't know, man. It was that game messed with my emotions from start to finish. It was just an absolute roller coaster. You know,
Absolutely.
Start off up 14-0 with Omar Bayless with the 92-yard touchdown, just like that. And then you get the scoop and score, and then all of a sudden you're looking at a 31-31 game at halftime. You're like, what happened? It was a little worrisome for a little while. The secondary had a few blown coverages that led to some easy plays by Troy there, but the Red Wolves were as resilient as ever with every injury that they've had. The penalty bug kind of came back and bit us again.
Yeah.
The 13 for 138 yards is not ideal at all.
Brutal.
But yet, in the end, down your starting quarterback, down your first 4 running backs, essentially, hurt all over the defense, and find a way to pull out that road victory really speaks to how resilient this team is and how much fight they really have in them. I was really proud and very impressed with the road win overall.
Absolutely, and I think you hit the nail on the head. You go on the road, especially at a place like Troy, who they're going to be good. Just no mincing words there. And you come away with a win no matter what the circumstances are. And you mentioned there, fifth-string running back, and I believe our good friend Kara Ritchie broke it down for us. Your starting quarterback, one of your best cornerback, one of the weak side linebackers, a defensive tackle was out. I think one of the safeties was out. Offensively, you've got a couple of O linemen that are beat up. They had every excuse in the book, but here we are, a 50-43 victory over what was probably one of the favorites over there on the east side of the conference.
Definitely. This is a game that coming into it, it doesn't necessarily decide who's going to win the West, but it's definitely a game that you want to win. If you can go across the division and beat one of their 2 best teams, and you definitely have to feel good about where you are in the West. We've still got plenty of tough games in the West coming up. I think it's a much better division this year. I think the Sun Belt as a whole is much better than it's ever been. But yeah, to go on the road against a team that's going to be favored to win most of their games outside of, a Power 5 matchup and, maybe App State. To go on the road and get that win is huge for confidence. It's huge for the future of this team. I mean, 1-0 in the Sun Belt is a lot better than 0-1, even if it is across divisional rivalry.
Absolutely here. And what do you make of Lane Hatcher in this one? I mean, goodness gracious. I mean, what a way to make an entrance into things. I know personally when we recorded the show last week, we hadn't gotten all the news of Logan Bonner and some of the other guys that were beat up in this one. But, right off the bat, one of my biggest concerns was, what's he going to look like running the show? Is the moment going to be a little too big? Because, this is a big game here, even though maybe on a national scale it's not one of those, hype matchups here. Although shout out Reese Davis, he was in on this one. But in the chemistry, because Logan Bonner really had some chemistry going with those receivers, and Lane Hatcher, it didn't look like he missed a beat.
The biggest thing that I was worried about when I heard the news, which first of all, shout out to Logan Bonner, wishing you a quick recovery. Logan's a great guy, outside of football. But especially on the field, he's a great leader. He was having a phenomenal season, super efficient, 10 touchdowns to just that one fluke interception, over 1,000 yards. So you hate to see a guy like that go down, especially after the start that he's had, after everything that he's been through the last 3 years as a backup to finally get his chance, and then it goes, it ends like that.
Yeah,
but,
heartbreaking.
I knew that Hatcher had what it took. The biggest thing I was most concerned about was his experience, being a freshman quarterback in your first game being on the road at Troy, when really you've only got one drive in garbage time against Georgia.
Yeah.
That's all you've ever played in your collegiate career. But I knew that he had the athleticism, the talent, the on-field IQ. You could see that in practice, throughout the fall, that he had what it took. He just needs to polish it a little bit. And, he made a few mistakes, freshman top mistakes, holding onto the ball too long, trying to make big plays instead of going to the easy 3 or 4 yards. He threw those couple interceptions. But overall, in the grand scheme of things, he had 440 yards and 4 touchdowns. He led the entire nation in passing yards in his first ever start. Can't say enough good things about Lane, how he handled the situation. The moment wasn't too big for him. He showed up. I knew he would prepare. He's one of the hardest working guys on the team. I knew he'd be ready, and he proved me right. So I almost felt like I was underwhelming his performance, like on Twitter and stuff. I was talking to people just because I kind of expected big things from him. I knew that he could go out and go for 300 plus yards and 2 or 3 touchdowns. But even for me, who I had high expectations, the 440 and 4 touchdowns, no one in the world expected that outside of, I guess, him probably. He probably knew he could do it.
Right, and also pretty efficient with the ball too, 25 at 35, not too shabby. You mentioned he could go over 300. How about number 2 all time in a single game in terms of passing yards for the young fella at 440 here. Let me talk about the defense here. They're very Jekyll and Hyde to me, and they do good things. Obviously, the field goals that when they were deep in territory were key in this one. In fact, I think Troy had 2 field goals that they had to settle for from 22 yards out, and I think another one from 20. So instead of those being touchdowns, they were field goals. Now, I know a lot of people are going to look at over 500 yards, and they forced a couple of turnovers on top of this, but it seemed to be like the defense played all right, even though the numbers maybe kind of don't necessarily indicate that. Would that be a safe assumption there?
Yeah, kind of a pattern throughout the season I've noticed is that between the 20s, the defense gives up a lot of chunk plays, but once it gets down to it, when it's time to step up, they do a really good job of making teams settle for field goals, keeping teams out of the end zone. It's mainly just that in between area to where SMU just chunked up the field. It seemed like every play they were getting 6 or 7 yards. Georgia's a little bit of a wash, obviously.
Yeah.
Georgia, but Georgia was able to do the same thing. But then you see it last week against SIU, to where SIU is able to move the ball really well, but they come up huge in the red zone. I think it was 4 times that SIU came up with 0 points in the red zone. And that trend kind of continued into this Troy game to where, like you were saying, to limit them to a couple field goals with short fields, and then you come up big with the safety when that's really essentially the turning point of the game there. And even there at the end, I know it came down to the 10-second runoff, but essentially they kept Troy out of the end zone one way or the other. You don't, if they get that one more play, who knows what would happen? But we don't have to worry about that. We didn't get the one more play, but
Absolutely.
overall, yeah, they had a few missed. I haven't seen the film, so I don't know if it was more on defensive line not getting enough pressure, corners missing assignments, or receivers just making great plays. But there were quite a few big plays over the top, but at the same time, Caleb Barker is one of the best quarterbacks in the Sun Belt. He's going to make those plays. He's got a talented receiving core. And, ultimately they gave up 43 points and a lot of yards, but they made just enough stops to get the win. In the end, that's what matters. It might be a little concerning going forward when we play some more high-powered offenses, but Troy's probably the most high-powered offense we're going to see. So hopefully the trend is that the defense will keep getting these big stops, and hopefully the amount of yards will decrease a little bit going forward.
Yeah, surely they'll settle in a little bit. And again, like we said earlier, Troy is probably one of the more prolific offenses, not just necessarily in the conference, but probably in the nation. These guys can kind of get up and down the field here. All right, let's actually look ahead here. What seems to be a little easier task at hand coming up here. It's going to be Georgia State. It's in the ATL, 2:30 p.m. It's going to be on ESPN Plus. For anybody who's wanting to take this one in, it was a fun game. This game is always a little weird to me, and I don't know what it is about Georgia State and Arkansas State, but this one always seems to kind of be interesting, at least for a little while, and then more times than not, Arkansas State tends to flex a little bit just because, they're just flat better. And not to get, big-headed or nothing about it. They're coming in this week as the touchdown favorites in this one. Georgia State, boy, they're a bit of an enigma. You knock off Tennessee, almost lose to Furman, you lose to Texas State. They are something else here. And I don't really know what to make of it, but I think for the Arkansas State Red Wolves, big key here. Let's get to our 5 keys here. The first one is going to be flat out containing Ellington. That guy is a legit baller. The quarterback there, he can run it. He can kind of sling it around a little bit. What do you make of Ellington there in the Thurs offense?
I mean, what you just said, he's the key. If the Red Wolves defense is able to slow him down, then their day will be much easier. He's got 846 passing yards and 244 rushing yards this season. He was the big catalyst in their win over Tennessee.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's their playmaker. He's their offense essentially. I mean, they've got other dudes. They've got Barnett that has over 300 rushing yards. They've got McCoy with nearly 300 receiving yards on the year. But everything goes through Ellington.
Right.
He's one of the better offensive players in the league. Being for Georgia State, he doesn't really get a lot of the recognition that guys like Logan Bonner was getting before the injury. Caleb Barker for Troy, guys like that. But I mean, he's as good as just about anybody that the Red Wolves have faced this year. And if we allow him to, run free and make plays, then it could end up being another long day for the defense.
Yeah. Well, and I know, too, traditionally, mobile quarterbacks tend to give Arkansas State some fits at times. And obviously, the college game gets those guys for a reason because they give lots of teams fits. But it seems to be in a special thing for the Red Wolves with these mobile quarterbacks. They just can't seem to figure it out, or they don't make it easy on themselves. I should say that.
Yeah, they've had one test earlier in the year already with Armani Rogers.
Yeah, shut him down.
But he's not as much of a passing threat as he is a running threat. And
right.
The defensive line played out of their minds that game. I don't have the exact statistics, but I want to say it was like 6 sacks on Rogers that game, or if not that many sacks, plenty of hurries, and they were able to shut him down. But yeah, traditionally that mobile quarterback has given us fits, but this will be the biggest test we've had so far as far as a dual threat quarterback.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what kind of game plan we have for him going forward. I haven't gotten to speak with Coach Duggan yet this week to discuss any of that, but I'm sure it'll come up in a future.
I'm sure he'll scheme it up here. Also, another thing I really want to see get going, and I've kind of said this the past few weeks now. I want to see the rushing game get going. I know they had over 100 yards in that one, but 34 for 100, not the most efficient. They did have the one touchdown, but and I understand they're down to shoestring guys in the backfield. Marcel Murray's still out, and that's a huge blow. Obviously, Ryan Graham being out for the year now, big blow here. But what do you make of the running game here? Am I making too much of it, or is it something that, you know, maybe going forward it could be an issue, even though it really wasn't against Troy?
No, it definitely could and will likely be an issue going forward if it doesn't get picked up somehow. Against Troy, one of their biggest weaknesses was the secondary, and one of our biggest strengths was the wide receivers and quarterbacks. So that was just kind of a perfect storm for our offense to put up 50 points. But like you said, with Marcel Murray being out, you know, he was the workhorse last year, you know, freshman of the year in the league.
Right.
And, you know, missing him is huge. But, you know, it is that next man up mentality. But then the next man up, Ryan Graham, was looking like he was starting worthy.
Oh, yeah.
He was just on the same team as Marcel Murray, you know, and losing him. And then, you know, now we're down to Azubuike has played well. Not sure what his injury status is. You know, he left the Troy game early, leaving the backfield up to Jamal Jones and DJ Chapman, who both played well. Chapman with a couple fumbles in that Troy game. If he can clean that up, he's a capable power back. And I mean, Jamal Jones, you know, even though he's the fifth string running back, he's been in the mix for some time now.
Yeah.
It's part of it comes down to the offensive line being able to get a push, get a surge, open up holes for these guys. But I mean, honestly, the biggest thing is if Marcel Murray can come back healthy, then that'll be just such a boost for the running game.
Oh, yeah.
We really haven't seen him this year. I mean, we saw him against SMU, and that was about it. So, you know, looking forward to his encore season. But yeah, if the running game can't get going, there will be a situation sometime down the road where you got to be able to run it for 3 yards. If you're not able to do that, it costs us a game. So I'm definitely with you. It's an area for concern at this point.
And another thing here, and again, I don't want to play too much into this a little bit, but obviously against the likes of Georgia, against the likes of Troy, they're going to give up some big plays. It just is the way it is. But even against SIU, I think the defensive backs struggled a little bit. And these are guys with some talent, but I need them to show up, especially against the likes of Georgia State, which, again, like I said, they can fling it around. Georgia State's offense isn't necessarily slouchy, despite what their record has been the past few years, but I want to see more from the defensive backs.
I definitely agree there. Like I was saying earlier, I'm not sure on some of them if it was, you know, blown coverage, missed assignments, or anything like that, but no matter what it was, I would love to see a better performance from the secondary. And yeah, if you look at all the games that we've played so far, the best defensive effort we've had was against UNLV, and they were not known as a passing team. They were very run heavy, and we were able to play well in that game and didn't give up. And even still, the secondary did give up that one big long touchdown, or might have been tackled inside the 5-yard line. Sorry, it's been a couple weeks.
Yeah,
but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they're definitely a weak point on this team, and you know, Troy was able to exploit that. If they don't tighten things up, then Georgia State is more than capable of exploiting that. Georgia State's kind of, they're a team I feel like a lot of people overlook because historically they haven't been that good, and even this year, you know, they beat Tennessee, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And then they haven't done a lot since, but they're an improved squad. You know, they're not a bad team despite what their schedule might say. You know, they lost in overtime to Texas State, but Texas State is a lot better this year as well. So they definitely, I think one of the biggest things is not overlooking this team. You know, prepare thoroughly for them. Make sure that, you know, every little detail is accounted for. Don't just roll into the game and go, it's Georgia State, we'll win. Especially on the defensive end, because they've got a very capable offense.
Absolutely here. And then quickly here, just penalties. Man, they are so, they're good about it one game and then they're not so good about it in another game. And granted, I know when you fling the ball around a lot, especially against a team like Troy, penalties are probably going to be up a little bit. But man, 13 for 138. Woo, we got to tighten that up.
Yeah, and I believe 5 of those were personal foul penalties as well, and that's just you can't do that. You're going to cost your team a game potentially. So the players, you got to be level-headed at all times. You can't let your emotions get the best of you. But yeah, this team's been very Jekyll and Hyde as far as turnovers and penalties. I remember against SMU, I believe we had 3 turnovers and 11 penalties. Then over the next 2 games, had a total of, I believe it was 6 total penalties and 1 turnover in the next 2 games. And then all of a sudden you turn around and have 13 penalties for almost 140 yards. You turn the ball over 4 different times. You know, that's just discipline. That's, I don't know, you know.
A little bad luck maybe involved.
I'm sorry?
A little bad luck maybe involved, especially on the turnover end of things.
Yeah, it's 13 for 140. I mean, just to be frank, it's pretty unacceptable.
Oh, yeah.
You know, especially when 5 of those are personal fouls. It's just, you can't do that. When you get a couple false starts, you know, offsides here, maybe a pass interference. There was the pass interference on the play that would have been a touchdown if not for the pass interference.
Right.
So, yeah, you take that one. Definitely rather have 15 yards than a touchdown, but you know, that's haunted this team in the past, and it seems like for a while we thought that was over. We thought that we turned a new leaf, but here we are.
Here
one of the worst penalty games we ever had. So
absolutely here.
Just got to be more disciplined.
Absolutely, I'm right there with you. I want to see some of that reeled in a lot. And then I guess finally here, the key to this one, just hey, keep doing what you're doing on offense. Score, score, score. I think you can kind of let Lane Hatcher cut it loose just a little bit more and see what the young blood's made of. I mean, you do that something like that against Troy, surely he could back that up with a similar effort against the likes of Georgia State.
Yeah, we haven't given much love to Omar Bayless, so I'm gonna give him.
He gets all my love and affection.
Omar has been unreal this year. He's become such an offensive weapon, one of the best in the country. I mean, he leads the nation in receiving yards by 1 right now, 689 yards and 7 touchdowns on the season through 5 games. You could kind of tell in fall camp when you watch it, it was like you knew that Kirk Merritt was supposed to be the main receiver, but when you'd watch him practice, it was like, man, Omar's making a lot of the big plays here, and that's translated very well this year. You know, Lane Hatcher, he's got a big arm. He's more of a dual threat than Logan Bonner is. Not that Logan can't run the ball. It's more that he chooses not to and only does when he has to.
Right.
Hatcher is going to bring that running element. He's not going to run it, 15 times a game, but he might have 4 or 5 carries for 20, 30 yards. And so, yeah, with him having weapons like Omar out wide and Kirk Merritt, Jonathan Adams Jr., especially if he gets Marcel Murray back, Dahu Green finally gets fully healthy. We saw him for the first time against Troy. He didn't do much in the game, but when he's healthy, he's a very capable player. And Georgia State is a chance for the offense to really, against Troy, it was like, felt like you had to score every drive.
Yeah.
Pressure of if we don't score, Troy will, to where the offense is kind of forced to make plays. I think in this game it's going to be more. We'll get to see the how the offense can gel as a full unit instead of just big chunk plays. So I'm looking forward to that. Them building chemistry together, and I expect another big offensive outing. Not that Georgia State doesn't have a good defense, but they do give up quite a few points. And I think that we have the tools to exploit that.
Yep, so it'll be fun to watch that. And also, big shout-out Omar Bayless. He is that dude, tied for the all-time lead in touchdown receptions in Arkansas State history with that first one there. So next one, crown him. And that's all there is to it here. Chase, man, we certainly do appreciate you coming on here. Where can the people find you and your work?
Well, thanks for having me, man. You can check me out on Twitter at JaceGage1. I write for RedWolfReport.com. That's through Rivals and Yahoo Sports. I also write for ArkansasVarsity.com, although not as much. That's more high school basketball. During football season, I'm pretty much just Red Wolves. If you're into the NBA, I also write for a website called Last Word on Pro Basketball. I have a podcast as well called Under Review with Chase and Nico with one of my good buddies. That's on Red Wolf Radio. It's also on Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud, all that good stuff. You can check all that out on Twitter. All the links and stuff are on there. And you can see me around campus too. So I'm still in school. I'll get out
still grinding.
But, so if you see me around, say hey, whatever. I guess that's all I got, man.
All right, man. Well, hey, you tell Deco, man, I'm ready for him whenever he's ready.
Sounds good, man. I'll let him know.
All right, brother. Hey, we appreciate it again here. All right, again, Georgia State is the opponent next week, 2:30 Saturday afternoon on ESPN Plus. Should be a big one. Hopefully, the Red Wolves can come out 2-0 in that affair here. But excuse me, a little choked up there. But make sure you come back right here next week. We'll have that full breakdown for you. Checking out the highlights, also looking ahead, because out there on the horizon, there's a big game. Can't overlook this one, but the Ragin' Cajuns will be the next one, and that one's going to be dicey. That one's going to be nasty. Let me tell you about that right now here. All right, that'll do it. We'll wrap things up here. Till next week, guys. We'll see you.